All right, I think we are now live. I want to welcome everybody to our weekly show, Nomberg Law Live, as we've been doing the last couple of years. We bring to you interesting people and having just conversations that are in their areas of expertise. And I'm so pleased to have my friend Justin Onwenu with me today. Good morning, Justin.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And we had a good little chat this morning leading up to now. I've known Justin, probably more than 10 years now. I met Justin when he and my daughter Sydney were at the Altamont School here in Birmingham together. They graduated together. Can you believe it's already been 6 years? 2014 class.
Right.
That
It's
just means that you guys are getting old, not me, y'all. Well, Justin, for those of you who don't know, Justin, you do need to get to know this young man because he has got such a bright future, I think. He was at, correct me if I'm wrong here, Rice University after Altamont, where you were
right.
student body president.
Correct.
And then you currently are employed with the Sierra Club and live in the Detroit area.
Correct.
Very
Yeah.
good. Well, for those who don't know about the Sierra Club, tell us what that organization's about, Justin, and a little bit about what you do for them.
Yeah. So Sierra Club's an environmental organization, the oldest and largest environmental organization in the country. So there are millions of volunteers across the country, staff that are located in DC and California and Michigan and Louisiana and all over the country who are fighting for things like clean air, clean water, fighting back against climate change, and a whole lot of other environmental policies. So I started with them about a year ago, graduated from Rice in 2018, and it feels like just yesterday I was at Altamont. So it's good to be with you. It's good to see you. But I'm excited about the work that the Sierra Club's doing, especially locally. There's a lot of conversation about water in the state of Michigan, the state of Flint. We're surrounded by the Great Lakes. 80% of North America's fresh water, 20% of the world's fresh water is located in Michigan in the Great Lakes area. So there's a lot going on around making sure that we secure clean water, affordable water for people. And that's what I've been focused on a lot. Additionally, the Midwest, the Rust Belt has had a lot of deindustrialization.
Mhm.
There are a lot of companies that have gone overseas or gone to different places in the U.S. So there's a huge concern about what type of job opportunities people have access to. And as someone who focuses on environmental issues, I think wind turbines, solar, and other green technologies can fill that gap and help a lot of the deindustrialization that's been happening for decades.
Well, before we get into some of those specifics, and all of this is such a fascinating topic and such an important topic, but Justin, how did you get interested in the Sierra Club? How did you get interested in environmental issues?
Right. So it's a I think it probably was not as surprising to a lot of my friends or people I went to, college and high school with, to be doing kind of civic based work. But for most of my life, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to address health disparities. I wanted to go throughout the U.S. setting up clinics and surgery centers, and so that was my dream for a very very long time. Chose Rice, actually early decision to Rice because it was right across the street from the largest medical center in the world. So that was, my main purpose in attending Rice, was to go to medical school. For me, I'd always combined public health and policy with my interest in medicine. So I never just wanted to focus on medicine. Um, but that changed in my senior year. So this was 2017 in the fall. There was a huge hurricane that hit, Hurricane Harvey. You may recall during that year there was a Hurricane Maria. There was Hurricane Irma, I believe. There were hurricanes that hit southern Florida and Puerto Rico and just the Gulf Coast region in general.
Mhm.
I had family calling, I had friends calling. Because the entire city of Houston, just from the images, was pretty much underwater. There were pockets. The university was one of those pockets where where things were not as bad. But you could see just the entire city underwater. And so for me, that was, and I'm trying to get the lighting right, but that was a turning point for me, because I saw and I was involved in the community, and just saw, whether it be on Facebook or just images on the news, I knew people were hurting, their homes were destroyed. People spend their entire lives trying to buy a home and then leave it to their children. And so for folks to have their entire life wiped out, and a lot of folks not having flood insurance because the flood maps were not, were not up to date or on par. So just seeing that destruction, one of the things that we did in the immediate aftermath of the storm was we sent out volunteers. Mm-hmm. So we sent out about 1,700 volunteers to muck and gut people's homes, to remove drywall, to go to churches and synagogues, to volunteer to, there were certain religious centers that were completely underwater. And so to go to those places of worship, to go to those homes, to go to those community centers and rec centers, and have to remove debris was something that just kind of stuck with me. And I became a lot more interested in climate. Why are these hurricanes happening so often? Why all this flooding is happening so often? And also became just a lot more interested in public health and crisis management and community work. And so over that year, senior year, I decided to put medical school to the side and to focus kind of on community-based work, and that's how I started getting involved in environmental work.
Reading about these things, studying about these things is one thing, but getting out and doing and volunteering your time and just being part of the process to help repair, rebuild, and forge friendships, that must have made an immediate impact on you. It's what it sounds like. As you know, we have family in Houston who were displaced for a year and a half. And the images and videos, we didn't travel there, of course, during that time period, but just seeing the images and the videos was very impactful. But living there must have been just an unbelievable experience. And it just sounds like you've pivoted from that, and you're making the most of it from that.
Yeah, it wasn't an immediate, okay, I'm gonna completely change my life, but I think one of the things that happened during the storm is, because I was involved in student government and the crisis response team, the crisis manager for the university turned to me and asked me to build a shelter that could hold upwards of 300 people, because folks in the community, you had professors and staff, mm-hmm. didn't have a home. And so the university was thinking about ways of supporting folks, and they were thinking, okay, we need to build a shelter. So within 48 hours, it wasn't just me, it was about 15 other students that we got together. We built a shelter, and we were looking up Red Cross guidelines for what the width for beds should be, what supplies need to be gathered. We set up logistics, and it seemed like supply chain management, class pretty much on the fly. But I think that had a huge impact on me, and it took about the rest of the year. Actually, on graduation day, I was still kind of informing family. I'm going in a different direction, not medical school, mm-hmm. figuring out what the next step is going to be. And I got a job offer on graduation day to focus on kind of rebuilding and identifying the long-term issues in Houston.
Could you have ever imagined when you entered Rice that at the end of your Rice undergraduate years, this was what you would be doing? Yeah. I mean, it's kind of surreal just from my perspective. I can only imagine from your perspective. Now, the day you graduated from Rice and you get a job opportunity, tell us about that day, because that sounds like a very special day.
Yeah, so I had been trying to figure out what to do kind of the month or two leading into graduation. I wasn't entirely sure. you know, my dad was suggesting, why not get a MD just to keep in your pocket just in case, and then do whatever you want. Um, but so on graduation day, I was one of the student speakers, and Michael Bloomberg was our commencement speaker, and he talked about honesty and honor. And one of the things that I talked about was just engaging in the local community, trying to be advocates for change. And so afterwards, Rice has this tradition where you walk through the Sally Port, which is the huge art on campus, where people will gather and take pictures. And so I was doing that. And the provost at the time, who was one of the folks on the crisis management team during the storm, came up to me, and she was trying to tell me, like, I have a group, you should think about it. But she was very serious and very persuasive about coming on board to lead outreach for the Hurricane Harvey registry. So I think the best explanation for what the Hurricane Harvey registry is that after 9/11, there was a huge effort to kind of identify the diseases and conditions that first responders were exposed to. And you may have seen first responder healthcare bill and all of those bills that have come and still are being fought for now. A lot of those bills came because there was a health registry, the World Trade Center Health Registry, that was tracking all of the folks who were in the area at the time and the conditions, long-term conditions that they were exposed to. And so similarly, the goal of the Harvey registry was to say folks have lost their homes and they're still not on their feet a year and a half after the storm, or folks have lost income and they still haven't recovered, or folks have to go to the hospital for certain conditions and have medical bills. So we're trying to uncover a lot of the personal toll that the storm takes on people, and that exposed me to a lot of just environmental issues. People who live next to industrial sites and refineries and Superfund sites where things were flooded and destroyed, and how that had an impact on their health. So I did that for a year, and that's when I decided to come with the Sierra Club in Michigan, and focus a lot more on the public health and environmental justice aspect of the work.
Wow, what experiences you've already had, and not even 25 yet. Well, let's talk.
I feel old.
You feel old? No, you don't. You certainly don't look old, but you sound like you've been through some experiences that have made you wise, and you're learning, I'm sure, every single day. It sounds like you probably have some excellent mentors who are part of your world. But I want you to talk about, I've seen this term, environmental justice.
Mm.
And for those of us who are not part of the Sierra Club world and the active uh, environmental projects that you're involved in, I want to learn a little bit. Teach us a little bit. What does environmental justice mean to you and the mission that the club has?
Right. So environmental justice, I think the best way to put it is that everyone should have access to a healthy environment, to go to school, to work, to play, to live. That means clean water, clean air. And in a lot of ways, there have been a lot of reports. I think Dump on Dixie or Don't Dump on Dixie is a book that I would recommend. Toxic Waste and Race is another report that I would recommend. But there have been a lot of studies that have been done that show that communities that don't have that don't have a lot of money, so poor folks, Black folks, brown folks, are oftentimes the ones who are living right next to waste sites, to refineries, to other industrial sites that have a poor impact on their health. So as an example, a couple of months ago before COVID, I visited a school in Macomb County in Michigan that was literally built on top of a landfill. Now, the site was remediated to certain standards, but regardless, why would you have a school on a landfill, whether the land was remediated or not? And so they're seeing problems now where they're literally having to vent out the methane that is just deep, deep, deep in the soil that is on the playground, is on the very foundation of the school. And most of the kids who go there are low income or Black kids. And so when you look across the country, that's just one example, but we have a tremendous number of schools, of hospitals, of neighborhoods that are located near these sites, and that has a huge long-term impact on people's health. And so I think from my perspective, being interested in public health, I just feel like I could not ignore that is how a lot of people get sick in the first place. You may show up to the doctor with asthma or certain weird type of cancers, but it may be because of the environment you grew up in, or where you're living, or the site that's right next to where you go to work. So that's what environmental justice means to me.
Well, it's all very interesting, and I'm sure the more you literally and figuratively dig, you find more issues. And I'm wondering, are you finding that, for example, this one example with the school, that maybe at the time the school was built, the environmental standards were X at that time,
Right.
but now we know so much more about science and how the world works. I have no idea how old the school is, but it may be that the standards are so much more strict now that that school would never have been built on that particular site in today's time,
Right.
or remedial measures would have been taken differently. But it's all, I'm sure you're learning about how the laws intersect and
Yeah.
work in these areas. You probably, at least I think I've seen maybe photos or videos where you're working with lawmakers and
Right.
people in the legislation, maybe for the state of Michigan. So tell us a little bit about those experiences, because for a man who's now what, 23, have you turned 24 yet? I'm not
It's
trying
a
to.
couple weeks.
You are getting some real world experiences. And before we go there, I gotta give some shout outs. Some of your former classmates. Tommy Thetford's on here. Katie Wright is on here. Sydney. Um, Charlotte Russ has joined us. Thank you guys, and a whole host of others. Liz Edwards. So thank you guys for joining in. I'm catching up with Justin Onwenu, and he's teaching us and telling us about his experiences with the Sierra Club in Michigan. So Justin, I didn't mean to be long-winded, but tell us about some of your experiences about working with lawmakers and how that is helping you to do what you do.
Yeah, I think one of the first things that I asked a community member when I started working for the Sierra Club was just trying to get an idea of what they found to be effective, what's worked, and what hasn't been successful. And what he told me was, you need lawyers to sue people, and we need our laws to be stricter. So at the very foundation of kind of what community members see as being the most effective method is the law. I think you point to the example of standards not being very strict, decades ago, and now how that's catching up to us. I think something else that I figured out and working with policymakers and folks who are familiar with the law is just even how we measure what acceptable levels of pollution is troublesome. So just as an example, typically when you go to the state of Michigan or to the federal government and ask for a pollution permit, you have company A that says, okay, I'm only going to pollute 100 pounds of pollution per day. You have, and the limit is 100, so they're fine. You get the permit. Company B does the same thing. Hey, I only want to produce 99 pounds of pollution per day, and they get a permit because they're under the limits. But when you have 30 different industries that are each technically under the limit of, the standards provided on the state and federal level, but they're all located in one neighborhood, the folks who are living there are experiencing company A, B, all the way through Z. And so that's an example. The term that we use is cumulative impact. And cumulative impact of pollution hasn't been heavily factored into the permitting process. So that's an example of something that I've been learning and focused on as it relates to the law. And I also just think that working with lawmakers is really important. A lot of times, just our laws just aren't strict enough. We elect folks who regulate companies, but a lot of times they just don't have the tools to make sure that people are safe. and things certainly slip through the cracks, but we a lot of times just don't have the laws on the book. And so working with community members to advocate for ordinances and bills in the state house is something that we're focused on as well.
Do you think this will propel you on to become an attorney, go to law school?
I don't know. Maybe public health, maybe law. I don't know long term. I feel like I still have a little bit of whiplash from
I'm sure.
completely, and I'm sure my parents and grandparents have a little bit of whiplash too. So still figuring it out.
Well, it all is so very interesting, and I applaud you being so proactive and getting out there and not only doing what you're doing, but you're also sharing through social media, which is such a powerful tool and such a powerful way to get your messages across. Now, I'm sure not every day is, roses and sunshines for the type of work that you do. I'm sure there are those opposed to a lot of the efforts that the Sierra Club is trying to do. And I don't know if you've been exposed to that or have to get involved in any of those things, but it probably allows you to see both sides of every issue on some of the hot button topics that you're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is not roses every day. I think there's a new just emergency and crisis that seems to pop up, at least in the area I'm in. I would say on average of every 2 months, something pops up and then it's another cycle of rapid response. But I think I've also been exposed to just how people disagree on these issues. I do think that how we message and how we frame things is kind of what dictates whether people agree or disagree. I think people oftentimes are surprised to learn that, the environment, depending on how it's framed, is the most important issue, the top priority in Michigan. So when, a lot of times in the media, you see things are polarized in terms of, people on the left who want to kill coal, people on the right who want to save jobs, Green New Deal crazy folks, and folks who don't care about whether people are poisoned. There's a lot of polarization going on and just in our media and our political sphere. But I think when you just message things as do you want access to clean air and clean water, that's probably one of the top priorities of folks of all backgrounds in the state of Michigan. So there certainly, I think, are people who may not be supportive of the work or may not prioritize it, which I think is fine. But I think when we boil issues down to just their basic form of we're trying to secure clean air and clean water for folks, most people are supportive.
I would think that would be a common ground, but you're right. I think framing the issue is so vitally important and how your message is sent out there. Have you had an opportunity yet to be called to testify before any regulatory boards or the Senate or House of Rep in Michigan or any of the organized governments?
So I haven't had to sit on in front of an oval shaped room and testify to lawmakers, but we've had lobby days where we'll go to lawmakers' offices and talk about issues. And I'm also on the advisory council that the state has on environmental justice issues, and that's probably the easiest way that I found to give input other than the hearings. But
well, I can assure you, before you start showing a little bit of gray on the sides, you're going to be one of those who's going to be called up there to share and to educate. I can feel it. I just know, as passionate as you are about whatever you get involved in, those days are coming, my friends. You better get ready. Do you have a mirror in your condo or your apartment where you can practice your
I need to practice.
Well, let's fast forward 10 years from now. Have you thought about what are you going to be doing? Is this going to be part of your profession? Is this going to be where you're going to be making a difference in the world?
I've been, I try not to think so far ahead with how likely things are to change. Like 2020 had a whole list of bucket list items. I wanted to travel, I wanted to do all this stuff, and then COVID happened. But I do think in the future I want to get more involved in in a lot of other issues. I think COVID and just living in Michigan in general has exposed me to a lot of other issues that aren't related to the environment. We have 1 in 5 people almost unemployed. Michigan um, is one of those states that's not doing well when it comes to unemployment. So those issues like that I've been exposed to, and there are a lot of other issues in Michigan
Well,
I'm
that's
probably a lot more interested in getting
well,
involved into.
Justin, that's what I was going to ask you. And we're getting close toward the end of our conversation, and I'm so enjoying my time chatting and catching up with you. How has the pandemic affected or impacted your ability to do your job, or has it pivoted or changed some of the avenues of where you're going to head next?
Yeah, I mean, I think the issues have become a lot more focused on COVID. I've seen journalists tweet out or put on Facebook comments like, if your story is not related to COVID, it just is not gonna, my editor won't accept any stories that aren't related to COVID. And in a lot of ways, it's similar with the organizing work that's happening on the ground. Is that, you can connect environmental issues to COVID or economic issues to COVID, but in a lot of ways, everything is related to COVID right now. So it definitely has made things a lot more narrow and focused, and everything's online now. So phone calls, petitions, meetings, which is just, I'm young, so I should know all this technology, but it's still an adjustment to be on the screen and on the phone all the time, but it's definitely an adjustment.
Well, I tell you, by Thursday afternoon each week, this is not a new term, but it's a term I certainly use. I'm zoomed out.
Mm,
By toward the end of the week, I'm done.
mm,
I need a break from technology, and I'm sure that at times you probably feel the
yeah.
same way. Well, gosh, Justin, I could talk with you for the next couple of hours and just learn so much and enjoy my time catching up with you. Um, what's next for you? What hot topics? What's going on? Are there any current issues that are of noteworthy that you want to share that's currently going on with you?
Yeah, in my job capacity, I would say so. The Democratic and Republican national conventions are coming up, and I'll be going to the Democratic National Convention, and I'm on this committee that's trying to shape the platform related to environmental issues. So that's kind of the next 2 to 3 months. We'll be trying to advocate for strong environmental policies on the platform. And I think that'll be an exciting thing to do. It's always having to kind of split personal life and professional life when it comes to nonprofit status and political work. But I do think politics is an avenue to get a lot of the policies we want done, to make sure that they actually happen. So that'll be interesting to see over the next couple of months.
Well, I sure have enjoyed catching up with you, Justin. I thank you for your time, always for your friendship and your passion for what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. It's good to see you too. We gotta catch up some more too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, hopefully, at some point in the future, when the pandemic has subsided and we get back to more normalcy, and hopefully we can break bread again soon, my friend.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, guys, as we usually do every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central, I try to bring interesting conversations with people in their areas of expertise. If you're not following Justin on social media, you should. You really should. This fella, oh, I've been a big fan for years. He's going places. He's already gone places. And I certainly wish you the very best in whatever it is else that comes your way, Justin. Uh, guys, as we do, we'll be back to you next Tuesday at 10 o'clock. Hope you guys have a safe week. Just continue to please be patient. We're going to get through this. It's just going to take a little bit more time. Do the right thing. Follow what's the common sense protocols. And we'll catch you again next week on Nomberg Law Live. Take care.